Okay, so welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me on this gorgeous afternoon to learn about digestive health and how it connects with immune health. And before I launch into it, I'll just do a little bit of, Zoom guidelines. Um, so I'm going to run through my presentation. Please don't hesitate at any point if you have questions. Just use the chat to communicate with me, and I will do my best to keep checking that chat and answering questions as relevant as we go through. Um, and Yep, and just stay muted the whole time so that there's not any disruption. Um, okay, well, I am eager to be sharing this topic with you today. As Excuse me, bear with me. I just got to learn how to navigate the Zoom screens. Um, as a nutritionist, and especially someone who has struggled a lot through my life with digestive health, this is a very important topic, very relevant topic. I find that I'm, addressing it daily in the clinic. And so to give a little background about me, so my name is Sophie Alexander. I am the owner and lead practitioner at Nutritional Wellness Center. And I began my own journey with my own health, gosh, so many years ago, but I began nutrition response testing on my body about 12 years ago. But I, really started to become aware that I was struggling with health issues when I went to college, and I started having so many digestive issues, really severe gas and bloating. Um, and then it was once I started struggling with Lyme disease soon after graduating from undergrad um, that I really was like, okay, I need to figure out what's going on with my health. And it led me into the direction of actually finding the Nutritional Wellness Center first as a client, then being employed there, and then purchasing the business a couple of years ago. And it's through that journey that I've really come to understand so much about actually the connection between digestion and how it impacts immune health. And I really want to make this connection better known. Because I find in practice that there are so many reasons some people have compromised digestive systems, and that this then can impact their immune system and compromise their immune system. And through the world of nutrition response testing, we definitely know and have discovered that anything can cause anything. And so what we need to find out is what's causing it for you. If you are struggling with particular concerns in these areas, or if you know someone who is and want to have more solutions for them. So people on a regular basis, so many people in their day-to-day life are dealing with bloating, they're dealing with gas, constipation. It's an epidemic in the United States. Diarrhea or indigestion, reflux. It's incredibly common for people to be on all sorts of proton pump inhibitors or things to antacids. GERD, which stands for oh my gosh, I can't pronounce it right now, but it stands for gastroesophageal reflux disease, right? Excuse me there. Irritable bowel syndrome. And I think too many people think that these are just things that they live with, right? And that they don't know that there's anything that they can do about it. So that's one part of what I want to be talking about today for folks to understand what can be done about it. But then I think also with these times, being in the midst of this pandemic still, lots of folks are wanting to answer the question of why certain people are struggling so much with this virus, COVID-19. And why it's first they thought, well, it's just if you're older that you can get more seriously ill, but now people of all ages are getting quite ill, and then others not at all. And so, and trying to understand that, I think this conversation about how connected our immune health and our digestive health plays an important role in understanding that. So first we'll start with just some simple overview, what's the digestive system, right? So the digestive system consists of the parts of the body that work together to turn our food and our liquids into the building blocks and fuel that our bodies need to run themselves. Digestion begins actually even before you start eating. So a lot of people don't realize that, but as you think about food, taste food, see it, the gastric juices start being released. And just as a little side note, it can very much help digestive issues just to be more mindful about when you start eating, actually pausing, eating slowly, taking that deliberate time to eat, and preparing to eat, because yeah, everything starts preparing your stomach initially for the ingestion of food. So of course we eat through our mouths, the food goes down through our esophagus, which is a long stretchy pipe. It's about 10 inches long that moves the food all the way down into the stomach. And a lot happens in the stomach, but the stomach does have three main important jobs. Number one, it stores food that's come in, and it breaks that food down into a liquid mixture. And then it slowly starts emptying that liquid mixture into the small intestine. The stomach, takes a lot of time to churn and mash and mix food up, and then releasing it in small amounts. And it really changes the pH of the food. It makes it a lot more acidic to help kill bacteria that could be in that food, and for the release of gastric juices from the stomach wall to get it prepped for the small intestine to accept it. And that's an area really where a lot of trouble can start, because either there's not enough acid in the stomach and food starts to sit too long or starts to rot, or there's not enough bile that being released from the gallbladder, and thus the stomach is responding to it not being the right environment in the small intestine that the food gets released into. Okay. So then our small intestine, right? So the small intestine is where a lot of nutrient absorption takes place. The small intestine is 22 feet long. It's quite incredible. And its job is to break down this food mixture coming from the stomach even more. So the majority of vitamins and minerals, proteins, carbohydrates, and fats can be absorbed. Only a little bit of absorption of nutrients happens in the stomach. Just to back up a little bit to the stomach there, it's mostly protein, some protein absorption, some mineral absorption, and specifically B vitamin absorption. But the majority of the nutrient absorption comes from the small intestine, and it's helped out by the pancreas, from digestive enzymes released from the pancreas, bile made and stored in the gallbladder, which is then released to specifically help digest fats. The big thing about the small intestine, I'm not sure many people realize, is that it also plays this huge role of keeping out pathogens and toxicities. A lot of people talk about how the gut is actually where we have some outside on the inside, if that phrase makes sense, because you have still these outside foods and it's like traveling through us, but then there are cells, just like our skin cells, protecting our organs and internal body from this food traveling through our system. And through the small intestine, there's a very thin, it's just one layer of epithelial cells, which are skin cells that line the inside of your gut. And these cells are only one cell thick. So it can be very vulnerable, and it easily can get damaged and have dysfunction. So a crucial part of this gut lining, these cells that we're talking about that can malfunction, is the tight junctions, which are complex proteins between these epithelial cells. These tight junctions connect these cells together, and they regulate what can pass between them. So these tight junctions are like border control agents, if you want to think about that. And they really are meant to be not allowing anything to pass through that shouldn't. But when they get damaged, right, unwanted items like bacteria, undigested food, they can squeeze through these gaps between the gut epithelial cells. And this is where then we start to get an unwanted or immune response, because of course it comes to the body's defense. So first of all, what can create this gap, this gapping? So harmful microbes and parasites can impact and alter the tight junctions in the gut wall. And this results in a bigger gap between the cells. And this leads to a phrase you might have heard of. It's called leaky gut. Um, and so parasites are very common, right? A lot of people don't realize this or talk about it, but they are something that live in most people, right? And it comes down to whether there are too many of them or the body's homeostasis and balance is off. Same with all sorts of different microbes, right? Because our intestines are full of all sorts of bacteria and we want them to be generally beneficial to us, particularly the large intestine, which you may have heard of in terms of, wanting to have good probiotics in there. But this balance can easily get off, and I'm going to be talking about more reasons why it can get off. And so thus these harmful microbes and parasites can add to the leakiness of the gut. Also dietary factors, food sensitivities, chemicals in foods, they can trigger this reaction as well. And they increase the body's release of zonulin. And zonulin is a protein that is involved in controlling these tight junctions between the epithelial cells. So what happens is things leak through, right? Larger items that are not supposed to be coming through the junctions. And there is a whole labyrinth of the immune system right there, right beneath that for the body's defense. And this, if you've ever heard this phrase, 78 to 80% of your immune system is found in the gut. This is what we're talking about. It's actually called gut-associated lymphatic tissue, or GALT for short. And this lymphatic tissue is all throughout the small intestines. And so its job is to immediately, rush to the body's defense and to attack unwelcome, unwanted molecules that are passing through and put those microbes, toxins, and undigested food out of commission. The problem is that, now that we are living lives that have so many food-like substances and not actually real foods, that the level of toxicities, the level of chemicals in foods are so much higher, thus the rise of so many more digestive issues, and thus the rise of the leakiness in the intestines. This immune response that is not supposed to have so much work to do has a lot of work to do. And this is really the big crux of it, in the sense that you now have a heightened immune response very regularly in the body. This leads to a lot of systemic inflammation, and it can be the underlying piece of many autoimmune conditions, as well as you see listed here, many other health concerns that are associated just with having this compromise in the digestive system. And so this is more of what I was talking about, just in general, people's stress levels are incredibly high. This past year, that's the main thing I've been hearing from clients is even higher how high stress level is in terms of how much they've been trying to juggle, as well as overall concern, listening to the news and the state of the world. Many people have access to very poor foods and make poor food choices. The amount of medications in use, and then the body dealing with infections. And as I was mentioning, all these toxicities that particularly come from personal care products, from cleaning products, and that are literally in the food, on the food, sprayed in the ground to grow the food that thus ends up in the water, right? And a big piece of that is the pesticide glyphosate, which they're now talking about, being in everyone's bodies, being in the water and in the soil. And so that's really my viewpoint on why so many people are struggling with COVID-19 in such serious ways when overall people think of them as healthy, right? I know that's a very broad generalization because there are people known to have comorbidities or to have been very frail in certain ways. But for those situations where you're like, oh, my cousin who's 30 and was healthy got so sick, and that was really scary. I encourage you to, think about other ways that actually people can be quite unwell and not, um, necessarily having diabetes or having a heart condition. Um, and because they could easily be living with on a daily basis all this digestive dysfunction that they're not just addressing, and thus living with very high level of inflammation and immune dysregulation that is now contributing to their immune system response when faced with this new virus. Um, so these are very broad steps that I'll talk about in a little bit more detail, but I do feel a huge part of improving digestive health and thus contributing to your immune resiliency. Number one is taking different steps to address stress level, right? So that can take so many different forms for each individual, and it's not my place or training to tell you which one, but just that it is such an essential part of maintaining good health. So it could be, getting out for walks or doing meditation or yoga practice, and um, I just bear with me. I'm just noticing the chat. Oh, and I'm just learning that there was a delay with some of you getting the link, and so I'm so sorry to hear that because I'm in the midst of things now, and you're just jumping on. Um, and so, yeah, and I see that some of you are just joining me. Well, I'm going to move. I definitely have flexibility and time today. So I'm kind of almost near the end of some of my slides. But what I can do is move forward a little bit and then go back for those of you that would like to stay on with me and go back. I hope that sounds like a good solution. All right, so I've been talking about, talking about different ways to handle stress. So this one, following a healthy and balanced diet. Oh gosh, that's such a broad statement, right? And you know that, I particularly specialize in what is the correct diet for each individual. And I do not believe that there is like one diet overall that everyone needs to eat, except that I do very much see that there are these overarching principles that apply to everybody. And those principles are to eat real food, that it looks like food, meaning just avoiding processed foods and avoiding refined foods, and avoiding refined sweeteners and commercial oils, right? So that's the broad guidelines. Um, the the details of that, are you somebody who needs to eat more or less protein? Are you someone who can tolerate grains or who cannot tolerate grains, or can tolerate certain sweeteners or not? Those are the nitty gritty details that we very much need to get figured out per the individual. But in general, um, a food that either you need to cook it yourself or eat it raw or prepare it in a way to eat it, versus something that comes in a package. Or if it does come in a package, that you can recognize everything on that label and the ingredients label is short. And ideally the ingredients label is all also recognizable foods. And then using avoiding completely any white sugar or refined sugar, and staying far, far away from are refined vegetable oils. So that would be your canola oil, your safflower oil, your sunflower oil, and making making sure that you have what the opposite of that, the good fats in the diet. Specifically to healing and repairing those epithelial cells that I was talking about earlier, who play such a vital role, like our defenders along the digestive tract. The bone broth is particularly amazing because it contains a high level of glutamine, which is an amino acid that helps to repair those tight gap junctions and repair those cells. Is an incredibly restorative thing to have in your diet. And so for anyone that is showing these signs of leaky gut syndrome, which I would tell you would be majority of clients I see, I encourage them to get bone broth into their diet regularly, whether that be drinking it as a warm beverage, using it as a base in soups and stews that you make. My husband makes a green smoothie every morning and he uses bone broth as his liquid in it. I'm not willing to do that, but I think it's awesome that he does, and he seems to enjoy it. For clients who are unable or unwilling, or really it doesn't appeal to them to have bone broth, we do have them use collagen. And so collagen can come in a powder that's more easy to use and to hide in a smoothie or in beverages. And it is a tasteless, odorless powder that has basically been derived from collagen, right? So the way you can make collagen is you can harvest joints of an animal or the hide of an animal, and collagen, of course, gets really thick and gelatinous, especially when heated and then cooled, and that's how you make gelatin. So the collagen is processed just a little bit further than that so that it doesn't behave in the same way and will disappear into wherever you're trying to hide it. And so that's personally, I use that in smoothies regularly. I'll hide it in my children's oatmeal or things like that too. And that can be another great source of that amino acid L-glutamine that helps to repair the epithelial cells in the small intestine. But as I was talking about just how much the level of toxicity impacts the digestive tract and thus impacts the immune system, whenever possible, avoiding unnecessary medications, avoiding toxicities in the sense of, what are your personal care products? What are you putting on your skin? Have you looked them up on the Environmental Working Group website where they can be rated, and you want to be using items that rate a 1 or a 2. And I think you'd be shocked at just how many items, even things that you think are a healthier option, really have a high chemical load that has not been proven safe, right, for humans. Same with personal cleaning products, things that you're using regularly. And it makes such a difference to eat organic. The Environmental Working Group that I just mentioned publishes each year the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen, and they just recently came out with their newest list. And top of the list of the Dirty Dozen, meaning the things grown with the most pesticides, is strawberries. We're coming into strawberry season, so excited. And so it's just one of those places where you can, it makes you realize it is worth spending the extra money buying it organic to be reducing that pesticide exposure. Another big place to be aware of is your water and your water source, whether you're on city water or you're on well water. Knowing what's in your water and filtering it is another way that you can significantly decrease unwanted exposure to all sorts of pharmaceuticals, to pesticides, fungicides, things, as well as with city water, chlorine and fluoride exposure. And if you do have immune challenges, whether you know it or not, that's a huge role. That's something we do at Nutritional Wellness Center, which is help the body restore its balance, restore its homeostasis of having um, whether it's parasitical, or whether it's bacterial, whether it's viral, all these things live in us. And it's about getting it back into balance so that they are not causing symptoms and causing distress to the digestive tract, and then to thus an overdone immune response. But I want to explain a little bit more. I have this triangle here where you see I have like compromised digestive system on the top. And then I have down in the other corner nutritional deficiencies, and then I have organ dysfunction. And so I just want to explain that if you're dealing with any kind of digestive symptoms, even the more obvious ones that I was talking about, bloating, gas, constipation, diarrhea, reflux, then you have nutritional deficiencies, right? Because of that lack of absorption. And because you have nutritional deficiencies, and you have organ dysfunction, because unfortunately your organs are then not getting the support that they need to run all their functions and be vital. Because if you notice with a triangle, if you pull one corner of the triangle and you then you throw off the other two corners. So even if you don't have obvious digestive symptoms, right, but some other organ is off, you've been diagnosed with something like, say, fatty liver, or some kind of overactive bladder, or something like that, some other thing where an organ is not doing its job correctly, then that's going to pull off the triangle too. And it means you have compromised digestion, and it means you have nutritional deficiencies. And so it can go, you can pull any one corner off, and that you're throwing off the other two corners. And what can happen is through time is you just start to have a downward spiral. You have further and further organ dysfunction, further nutritional deficiencies that can further compromise the digestive tract, till eventually, you do actually get diagnosed with digestive symptoms too. You're like, oh, why is this reflux all of a sudden here? Or you get it's gone far enough that that there's autoimmune disease being diagnosed, or things like that are part of that heightened immune response that's been going on unchecked for a long time. And so what needs to be done is need to put a stop to it somewhere, right? We need to put a stop in this triangle, and stop that downward spiral, and then start to stabilize the body and rebuild. But at least first stop the damage, and then begin to address the nutritional deficiencies, address the organ dysfunction, address the compromises in the digestive system, and help the body rebuild and repair. And a big thing I want to draw everyone's attention to is that you can take that digestive dysfunction, and replace it with sugar, and just realize that sugar causes nutritional deficiencies, and sugar causes organ dysfunction. And so, especially in the line of work I do, which is counseling people to change their diets, is really asking people to recognize that their current daily habits of how they eat can be very much playing a role in their health issues, and that a big part of getting well and starting to rebuild and repair the body is that willingness to look for the places where the sugar is and make those changes, so that part of this triangle can stop spiraling downward. And so this is what we do in the office on a daily basis at the Nutritional Wellness Center. As I was talking about, helping the body to stabilize, and then helping to rebuild. We use a system of analysis called nutrition response testing, where we use to analyze the body in order to determine what we call these underlying causes of ill health. And When these are corrected through safe and natural means, the body can repair itself in order to maintain and attain more optimal health. And it's truly amazing, just the wins that we see on a regular basis. When we, even me as the clinician, seeing, oh gosh, I know there's so much further we need to go to actually like repair these organ systems and rebuild them. But when we get to that first, stopping that downward spiral, people getting their energy back, or just observing that their poops are healthier, or having not so much bloating, and how that builds over time. So we design our programs to address why people have digestive issues that are affecting their immunity, or gosh, in the reverse, if there's somebody who comes in and they just get sick all the time and prolonged, we address, gosh, what's gone out of balance in the system. I often, with a basis with digestive issues, and start to repair it, so that doesn't happen. It allows us to be very specific and accurate in handling exactly what each individual body needs. And so I say the time is now, right? As we're, especially in the midst of this pandemic, where we have so much focus on wanting to be well and wanting to stay healthy, really working to optimize your health in these different ways, right? Especially on ways that you might not even know that you need further support, but particularly if you are dealing with digestive issues that are basically your body's warning sign. Oh, sorry, my screen went blank there. These are your body's warning sign that things aren't right, right? And you may not be thinking that that is connected to your immunity or would have any impact on how your body responds to viral exposure, but you absolutely can be proactive, and you absolutely can take your health to a new level. All right, everybody. So that's my overall presentation. And what I think I'll do is I'll stop recording. And then if folks have questions,